The studio lights were bright and the room buzzed with energy. Every seat in the audience was taken. Some people held their phones up, recording even before the cameras started rolling. Today's guest was someone the world couldn't stop talking about: Meghan Markle. The show's teaser had promised something big, a raw and unfiltered interview. And now the moment had come. Meghan walked out in a crisp white dress, heels tapping softly on the polished studio floor. Her smile was calm, graceful. But anyone watching closely could see the stiffness in her shoulders and the tension behind her eyes. She gave the audience a polite wave and sat down beside the hosts, Whoopi Goldberg, Sunny Hostin, Joy Behar, and Anna Navarro. Each of them greeted her warmly, but there was a strange chill beneath their practiced smiles. Whoopi glanced at Sunny. A quiet exchange passed between them, one of caution. Producers in the control room had already warned them this episode might not go as planned. Meghan started by thanking them for having her. Then she shifted quickly into her message. "Spent the last few years fighting misinformation," she said. "What I've experienced, what I continue to face is a media system that chooses to twist facts and paint me as something I'm not." Her words were measured. Her tone was soft but firm. She spoke about being misunderstood, about being turned into a symbol without her consent. Some in the audience nodded. Others remained still. The co-hosts listened carefully, their expressions controlled. Then came the moment that shifted everything. Sunny asked, "There's been a lot of discussion about your past interviews, especially the one with Oprah. You spoke about serious concerns in the royal family. Would you still say that racism played a role in how you were treated?" Meghan took a breath. Her smile didn't fade, but something in her eyes did. "I've never called anyone in the royal family racist," she said. "I never even used that word." People heard what they wanted to hear. There was a silence. One that felt like it stretched for minutes, though it was only seconds. Whoopi leaned in slightly. Her voice was calm, but her words carried weight. "Just to be clear, are you saying you never accused anyone of racism?" Because many people remember that interview very differently. Meghan looked directly at Whoopi. "I spoke about concerns that were raised," she replied. "But concern is not the same as racism. There's a lot of nuance that was lost in how the media chose to cover it." Sunny jumped in. Her voice was still polite, but sharper now. "But Meghan, you mentioned conversations about the color of your baby's skin. That's not a misunderstanding. That's real." Meghan's lips pressed together. "Yes, there were conversations, but I never said they were racist. People took it that way." Joy Behar, who had been mostly quiet, suddenly raised her hands. "Come on, Meghan, let's not rewrite history." The world saw the same interview. You may not have used the word, but you left enough for people to draw their own conclusions. There was awkward applause, scattered and unsure. Some people clapped for joy. Others stayed silent. Meghan shifted in her seat. Her smile now looked a little forced. She tried to change the subject. "I think what matters is the work I'm doing now, my foundation." But then her voice faded. Literally, her mic had been cut. At first, she kept talking, unaware that no one could hear her. The co-hosts exchanged shocked glances. The producers were scrambling in the control booth. One whispered into a headset, "Who gave that order?" The audience murmured, confused. Was this part of the show? A glitch? Meghan paused. She looked around, sensing the shift. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Then came a moment that would be replayed around the world. Whoopi leaning forward, mouthing something that couldn't be heard, followed by a sharp cut to commercial. The screen faded to black, and within minutes, Twitter caught fire. No one knew what had just happened, but everyone knew something had, and the real story was just beginning. The View cuts Meghan Markle's "Miquette," she said, left everyone speechless, written in simple English. Around 900 words, no headings. Intense in journalistic tone, the studio was in chaos, but only behind the cameras. On screen, everything had gone dark. The commercial break played like any other, with cheerful music and flashy ads. But inside ABC's control room, producers were shouting over each other. Why was her mic cut? Demanded the executive producer, Mara Simmons. She was standing. Now eyes locked on the live feed. Was that an accident? A younger assistant, face pale, looked down at the audio panel. It wasn't us. The signal was cut remotely, by upstairs. Upstairs didn't mean a physical floor. It meant corporate legal or worse. Someone from a government liaison office that occasionally sent observers for higher-risk broadcasts. Nobody ever saw them. But when things went wrong, their shadow was always there. Mara turned to the show's director. Get the hosts back on set. We go back live in 90 seconds. I want the feed clean. If Meghan talks, her audio stays off unless I say otherwise. Down on the stage, Meghan was sitting stiffly. Her eyes scanned the room, sharper now, no longer polite. She knew what had happened. She wasn't naive. Whoopi leaned in again. This time whispering something too low for the audience to hear. Meghan didn't reply. She just stared back, lips tight. Sunny Hostin stood up and walked off the set briefly, phone in hand. 10 seconds later, Joy Behar whispered to Anna Navarro. She's calling legal. The commercial break ended. The show returned to air, but without Meghan. Keika Coffee appeared. We'll return to the interview shortly. Whoopi looked directly into the camera and said, We are currently experiencing technical difficulties. Thank you for staying with us. The internet didn't wait for explanations. In London, #MikeGate was trending. In Washington, D.C., journalists were texting each other frantically. And in Los Angeles, a freelance investigative reporter named Ava Raines was already 2 cups of coffee into her morning when the story hit her phone. Ava was known for digging where others wouldn't. She had covered political assassinations in Africa, surveillance deals between Silicon Valley and the NSA, and even the original scandal around Meghan's royal exit. She immediately sensed this. Wasn't just a talk show drama. Something else was at play. She replayed the interview footage over and over. Meghan's last few words, something about nuance and twisting narratives, didn't sound like a misstep. They sounded deliberate. She was walking back a global accusation, and someone didn't want her to finish that sentence. Ava opened an encrypted messaging app and typed a question to one of her sources. Did ABC get federal pressure to cut the mic? Within 2 minutes, the reply came back. If you didn't hear this from me, but yes. From ADHS contact embedded. In media oversight. Department of Homeland Security. That didn't make sense, lest there was concern that Meghan's comments could trigger diplomatic trouble. Back in London, the BBC was preparing its noon bulletin. But instead of the latest on Parliament, the top story was Meghan's mic being cut. A palace spokesperson said only one sentence when asked. We do not comment on live media incidents. Yet, reporters noticed that top-level royals had been rushed into private meetings at Clarence House within the hour. And in Washington, a few staffers from the British Embassy were quietly meeting with State Department aides. Nothing official, but their request was strange. They wanted to know if ABC had acted on U.S. government advice or British concern. Behind the scenes, someone was very worried. Ava decided to call an old contact from the Meghan-Harry days, a former palace press officer who had quit right after the Oprah interview. He picked up after one ring. I was wondering when you'd call, he said. What happened this morning? Ava asked. Her mic didn't just go dead. That was surgical. Planned. There was a pause. Then the voice said she was warned. She got a message 3 days ago. A legal back channel that revising past statements could violate confidentiality terms, especially with what's classified. Classified. Since when is race talk classified? It wasn't the race comment, the man replied. It's what follows it. There's a reason MI6 started monitoring that interview. Before it aired, Ava's heart pounded. She turned on her recorder. This about intelligence sharing between the US and UK? Look, the man said, now nervous. They never wanted her to walk this back. If she did, it opens up the question of why she said it in the first place. Who pushed her? What deals were made? Deals, Ava pressed. The view is just the spark, he said. But the fire? That's going to come when someone leaks the backup recordings. Meghan's not the only one lying. The royals, the media, and yes, the governments. They've all been in on this. Because if people knew the real reason Meghan and Harry left, the line went dead. Ava stared at her phone. Somewhere between a scandal and a conspiracy, a deeper story was beginning to emerge, and she would be the one to find it. She turned to her editor and said, "Book me a flight to New York tonight." The war for truth had just begun. Ava Raines landed in New York just before sunrise. The city never really slept, but that morning the news cycle was on fire. Everyone was talking about Meghan's interview, the silenced mic, and what it could all mean. Reporters had already swarmed outside ABC headquarters, but no one had answers, just theories. Inside a small Manhattan apartment, Ava connected her laptop, inserted a secure flash drive, and played a clip that her source had sent over the dark web. It wasn't aired footage, was raw, unedited camera feed from the Oprah interview 3. Years ago, something only producers and network executives were supposed to have. In the leaked version, Meghan was far less careful with her words. She didn't just imply discomfort over Archie's skin color. She mentioned a specific name. And she didn't speak only about the royal family. She referenced pressure from allied institutions and what she called media-bactional diplomacy. Ava paused the video. Allied institutions. That meant governments, possibly intelligence agencies. This wasn't just a family drama. This was geopolitical. She clicked open a file labeled Annex T4, the name of the digital envelope her source had attached. Inside were metadata tags from a 2021 communications log between the UK's Home Office and American DHS officials. The messages were redacted, heavily, but one phrase appeared repeatedly. Black Tulip Protocol. Meghan Markle Asset Index active. Her fingers froze on the trackpad. Black Tulip. She remembered it from an old investigation, one that had never been published. It was supposedly a code name for informal surveillance operations jointly handled by US and UK intelligence, used when public figures posed strategic communication risks. In plain words, people who could trigger international backlash through speech. If Black Tulip was real, and Meghan had been flagged under it, then her media appearances weren't just controversial, they were dangerous. Ava reached for her phone and dialed her contact again, the former Palisade who had warned her 2 days earlier. He picked up, but his voice was different now, slower, unsure. "You shouldn't be digging into Tulip," he said. "I already have," Ava replied. Why was she flagged? Was it the racism accusation? "No," he answered quietly. "It was what came after." There was a long pause. She told people she had evidence, written records, private messages. She said some conversations were recorded about media coordination, about the pressure she was under to play the role, to distract from other royal family scandals. Someone higher up got scared. That's when Tulip was activated. "Who gave the order?" Ava asked. "I don't know," he replied. But it wasn't just in London. Washington signed off too. They had to. The two countries were in a military trade deal negotiation at the time. Public instability, not an option. And now she's walking it back. Ava asked, maybe she's tired. Or maybe someone reminded her what happens when certain truths come out. Ava ended the call and sat in silence. She opened a document she'd been drafting, a timeline of every major public and private statement Meghan had made since 2020, side by side with events in British American politics. The pattern was impossible to ignore. When Meghan and Harry accused the palace of racism, the UK's global image took a hit. American lawmakers began asking questions about intelligence sharing and immigration. Meanwhile, a major arms deal between the two nations stalled quietly. 2 weeks later, Meghan's media team stopped giving interviews. Her charities went silent. Harry declined all questions about the royal family. And now, after nearly 3 years of silence, she returns to live TV only to rewrite the story. Something was forcing her hand. Ava looked up as her phone buzzed. It was a short, anonymous text. Check ABC basement. Archive room 3. Ask for red box footage. She knew. The building. The View's raw feeds were archived there. Getting access was another story. Later that afternoon, Ava showed up at the ABC security desk with a forged ID badge and a fabricated research pass. The receptionist didn't even glance twice. Inside Archive Room 3, she searched for anything labeled Red Box. At the back of the room, buried under years of tape reels, she found a sealed digital case with a red tag and a date, March 3, 2021, the day the Oprah interview aired. Her hands shook slightly as she popped in the encrypted drive. The file was only 5 minutes long, but the timestamp showed it was recorded after cameras had stopped rolling. In the clip, Meghan speaks to Oprah in private, her voice low. "You know, they told me not to say it," she says. "They told me it would affect relations, trade, security, that I'd be hurting more than just the crown. Who told you?" Oprah asks. Meghan doesn't answer. But she lifts a phone and scrolls through messages. One screen flashes on camera just for a second. The message reads, "Stick to the script. Walk the line. If you cross, it we all fall." US Liaison Foreign Affairs Office. Ava hit pause. She sat in the quiet archive room, heart pounding. She now had evidence that American officials had warned Meghan about speaking freely. And someone had pulled strings on both sides of the ocean to keep her quiet. This wasn't just censorship. This was global, and the world was about to know. The View cuts Meghan Markle's mic quote. She said left everyone speechless, written in simple English. 900 words, no headings, with an intense journalistic tone. The footage spread faster than anyone could contain it. By midnight, a whistleblower had leaked the red box clip to a private server used by independent journalists across Europe. An editor in Berlin published a short piece quoting the most shocking line from the video: "Stick to the script, walk the line. If you cross it, we all fall." In less than 2 hours, it made headlines across 5 continents. Hashtag we all fall and hashtag Black Tulip trended on X, Instagram, and Telegram. Government spokespeople in the US and UK refused to comment. Buckingham Palace issued a short, vague denial, calling the report deeply misleading and irresponsibly sourced. But the damage was done. Ava Raines stood in front of the ABC building, holding her phone as notifications exploded. Calls from London, Washington, and even The Hague. Everyone wanted to talk to her now. She didn't answer. She wasn't ready. Instead, she emailed the Redbox clip to 3 trusted journalists in different countries. Each of them had secure outlets and lawyers. Something happened to her, the story wouldn't die. Her next move wasn't journalism, it was survival. By noon, Ava was sitting in a private studio, preparing to go live on a rival news network's global feed. She had agreed to one interview, short, controlled, and direct. The host was Claire Zubari, a respected international anchor known for facing presidents, prime ministers, and CEOs without fear. As the countdown reached 0, Ava's face filled the screen in millions of homes. Claire opened the segment with a calm, steady voice. Today we speak with Ava Raines, the independent journalist who uncovered what many are calling the biggest media government cover-up in modern royal history. Ava took a deep breath. This isn't about royalty anymore. This is about governments. suppressing speech on international platforms, manipulating public narratives, and weaponizing trust. Meghan Markle was silenced not by a glitch, but by a system. Claire asked, "Why now?" "Why did this come to light 3 years after the Oprah interview?" "Because Meghan tried to correct the record," Ava replied. "And when she did, the people who originally used her story as a political distraction couldn't let her walk it back. She retracted her claims. It would expose that they used her accusations for diplomatic leverage. That leverage would collapse and they'd lose control." Claire's face stayed composed. "Are you suggesting her original interview was planned?" Ava nodded slowly, pressured. "Maybe not scripted word for word, but guided. She was told what would shake the world and what needed to stay hidden. She wasn't just a royal family member, she was a communication weapon." There was a long silence before Claire asked, "And the View who gave the order to cut the mic?" "I can't confirm names yet," Ava said, "but I have audio logs showing a U.S. Homeland Security agent was present at ABC headquarters that morning. That's not normal for a talk show, and it's not legal unless there's a national security threat." The feed cut to a montage of newsrooms around the world. In London, angry protesters gathered outside Parliament, waving signs that said, "Free the truth and no more royal lies." MPs demanded an emergency inquiry into the palace's relationship with UK intelligence agencies. In Washington, D.C., a group of senators, Republican and Democrat, called for a closed-door meeting with the State Department, wanting to know why a private citizen's freedom of speech had been interrupted at the request of a foreign government. In Ottawa, the Canadian Prime Minister called the revelations deeply troubling and raised concerns about Five Eyes intelligence cooperation. The secret surveillance alliance between the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Meanwhile, Meghan Markle had vanished from public view. Her team issued no statement. Her charity websites were taken offline. Her Los Angeles home was surrounded by paparazzi, but no one saw her. She was either hiding or being kept out of sight. Ava knew what came next. The people who wanted this buried weren't going to let it unfold without a fight. That evening, her hotel room was broken into. Nothing stolen, just her files moved slightly, her backup drive unplugged, and the door lock scratched. She left the room within minutes. Ava didn't sleep that night. The email with the black tulip final entry file kept replaying in her mind. The words soft asset, redirect or silence, and joint operation weren't just shocking, they were dangerous. If the document was real, it meant Meghan Markle had unknowingly been used as a political shield. Her story had been turned into a weapon, not against the royal family, but for global diplomacy. And now, someone was trying to keep that secret buried. By morning, Ava had printed 2 copies of the file, storing one in a lockbox at a bank and sending the second to an international lawyer in Geneva. She knew she was past the point of no return. That afternoon, her encrypted inbox received another message. This one came from a source she hadn't heard from in nearly 5 years, a former intelligence analyst codename Silas. He had once leaked documents about CIA interference in European elections. Now he had one line for her. "Meet me. It's 2 p.m. Battery Park. West Side Bench. Come alone." She didn't hesitate. Battery Park was crowded, full of tourists and street performers. Ava wore sunglasses and a cap, blending in easily. At exactly 2 p.m., she sat on a bench near the water. 2 minutes later, a man in a navy windbreaker sat beside her. He didn't look at her. His eyes stared straight ahead. "I saw the file," he said quietly. "It's real, but you're missing something." Ava kept her hands in her coat. "What?" "The View wasn't just a reaction," Silas whispered. "It was a test. They knew she might slip. The moment she denied what she'd said before, they panicked. She walked back her claims, everything would unravel, especially what was hidden in the transcripts." "The transcripts?" Ava asked. Silas handed her a small drive. From the original Oprah tapes, unedited, a section never aired. Not even on Redbox. Meghan says something at the very end about a file someone inside the palace gave her. She says it proves they coordinated with a foreign intelligence contact to protect the crown during an arms deal scandal. Heart pounded. What deal? Between the UK and the US, Silas replied, $7 billion in military drones. The timing matched the worst of the media attacks on Meghan, while the public watched her. The deal passed unnoticed. She looked at the drive. Why are you giving me this? 'Cause someone already died trying to leak it, he said. And if you don't publish it, they'll find someone else to blame. Probably her. He stood up, looked at her for the first time, and added, watch your back. Ava returned to her apartment and loaded the drive. It contained 1 hour of private Oprah interview footage recorded after the cameras were supposed to be off. In the final 6 minutes, Meghan spoke plainly. I wasn't supposed to say any of it, she said. They told me I'd be protected. If I stuck to what was agreed, they needed the distraction. While the world watched me, they pushed through something else. And when I found out I was told to stay silent, Oprah asked, who told you? Meghan didn't answer. She simply showed a folder labeled Operation Laurel Crown. It matched the code word used in one of the leaked embassy emails Ava had seen just days before. Now it was all connected. The royal scandal, the media chaos, the mic cut, and the silence afterward. It wasn't about race or family or even truth. It was about shielding power. And Meghan had been used from the very beginning. Ava turned the footage into a secure video package, adding voiceover for clarity. She didn't send it to any U.S. outlet. Instead, she gave it to a global press consortium, the same team that once released the Panama Papers. They agreed to publish it under her name with international legal protection. At 9:02 p.m., the story broke. Operation Laurel Crown. How media, monarchies, and governments used a royal crisis to protect billions in secret deals. Within 30 minutes, news channels worldwide were reading direct quotes from Meghan's never-aired confession. Leaked documents were uploaded, redacted only for safety. Reactions came fast. In London, Parliament was forced into an emergency session. MPs called for a full inquiry into Crown involvement with intelligence services. Protesters gathered outside Downing Street with banners that read truth over tradition. In Washington, the president was briefed personally. Journalists stormed the White House press room demanding answers about DHS interference in free speech. Lawmakers from both parties asked whether American media had been compromised. The View issued a final statement, admitting that Meghan's mic had been manually silenced following legal recommendations from national security advisors. It was a quiet way of admitting the government had intervened. Meghan herself was still missing, but late that night, her team posted one short video on her foundation site. Her face was calm, no makeup, no lights, just her in a quiet room. I told my story, she said. And then I told the truth. One was expected. The other was feared. She paused. Now you know the difference? The screen faded to black. Ava sat in her apartment, watching the world react. She knew the backlash wasn't over. There would be hearings, investigations, maybe even arrests. But the silence was broken. And once broken, it couldn't be repaired. Truth had finally entered the room, and this time, no one could cut the mic. They called it the day the curtain fell. Every major newspaper in the world led with the same headline. International leaders were under fire. Royal spokespeople canceled public appearances. Intelligence officials refused to answer questions, and ABC's senior legal team had quietly resigned. But the story wasn't finished. In Geneva, the United Nations Human Rights Council opened a special session to review Ava's reporting. The topic wasn't Meghan Markle, it was global media control and government overreach. Countries that once worked together through quiet diplomacy were now pointing fingers, each denying involvement in the Laurel Crown operation. The session's title said it all. The hidden architecture of silence. Ava watched the live feed from a secure location. She hadn't been seen in public for 48 hours. A quiet tip from one of her sources warned her that some agencies, American and British, wanted her detained for questioning. But it wasn't about questions. It was about stopping what came next. Because Ava hadn't released everything, she still had one final file. It was encrypted, backed up in 4 countries, and labeled only with a phrase from the red box footage, the agreement. The file included minutes from a private meeting in 2021, held at Camp David. It was attended by 2 U.S. cabinet members, 1 British royal advisor, and 3 intelligence directors. The topic of the meeting wasn't Meghan's interview, it was how to respond if she said too much. The document made clear, if Meghan exposed the connection between her media persecution and government dealings, she was to be neutralized. That didn't mean harmed, not directly. It meant isolated, silenced, her charities defunded, her reputation slowly destroyed, and if necessary, her platform removed. Ava knew she couldn't sit on it anymore. She prepared the final story. The headline was simple: The Agreement, How 2 Nations Plan to Erase a Voice. As she worked, a call came through her secure line. It was Claire Zubari, the journalist who had interviewed her earlier. "They've issued a warrant," Claire said. "Not public yet, but I have it from Interpol contacts. They're framing it as national security leaks. You have 24 hours. Ava didn't panic. She expected this. A T, but something in Claire's voice made her pause. "They're not after you alone anymore," Claire continued. "They've frozen Meghan's team accounts. 2 of her lawyers have gone missing. This is bigger than we thought." Ava's heart sank. The machinery was still moving. Governments didn't blink just because a scandal broke. They adapted, shifted shape. And sometimes they got worse. She made a decision. That night, she RELEASED the agreement. The article went live on international servers with full document links, timeline breakdowns, and redacted names for safety. A video accompanied the story, showing snippets from the Camp David files and Meghan's silent footage. Ava didn't appear in it, only her voice narrated. "Silencing is not always loud," she said in the final moments. "Sometimes it wears a suit. Sometimes it speaks through contracts. And sometimes it cuts your mics, so the world never hears what comes next." By morning, the world was burning again. The UK Parliament voted to suspend direct royal briefings pending investigation. The US Senate formed a special committee on covert media influence. The Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance paused all internal briefings pending transparency reviews. And for the first time in modern history, both nations were forced to admit not only that they interfered, but that they had targeted a private citizen for geopolitical control. Still, the question remained, where was Meghan? Rumors swirled. Some said she was in Canada. Others claimed she was in a secure compound in New Zealand. Her team refused to say. Then, just past midnight in New York, a live stream appeared on her Foundation's website. There was no introduction, no build-up. Just Meghan, sitting in a simple chair, her hair tied back, no script in her hands. "I've waited a long time to speak without someone standing behind the camera," she said. "And this time, no one is cutting the sound." She paused, then continued. "I didn't want this. I didn't ask for any of it." Weeks passed, but the world hadn't moved on. The headlines still screamed with fallout from the agreement. Multiple governments were under internal review. The British Prime Minister had been forced to testify before a special council on royal influence in diplomatic matters. In Washington, 2 senior officials had quietly resigned. Their exit was labeled routine, but insiders knew otherwise. Still, people wanted one answer more than any other. Where was Ava Raines? She hadn't posted. She hadn't written. Her encrypted channels had gone cold. Whispers ranged from exile in Iceland to political asylum in Argentina. But none were confirmed until one morning a small, independent blog based in Oslo posted a new message on its homepage. It was a plain white screen with 3 lines in black text. You can erase a journalist. You can't erase the truth. Here is what you missed. Then came a final upload one Ava had held back. Even after publishing the agreement, it was a recorded video time-stamped 72 hours before the UN hearings began. The footage showed Ava in a quiet room, surrounded by old newspapers and file boxes. Her face was tired, but her voice was steady. "This will be my last message," she began. "I'm not hiding because I'm afraid. I'm hiding because I know how they work now. They don't kill people in alleys anymore. They erase them with paperwork, spin, and silence. And if they can't silence you, they try to make people forget why you mattered in the first place." She looked down at the table beside her. On it were 5 folders, each marked with a country name: United Kingdom, United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. These files contain the last pieces of what we now know as Operation Laurel Crown. They show how media platforms were manipulated across the Five Eyes Alliance, how citizen tracking software was quietly used on royal watchers, how journalists were blacklisted, how Meghan's image was twisted into a tool, then tossed away. She paused. "I didn't set out to protect Meghan, didn't even trust her at first. But when I saw the raw footage, when I read the files, I realized something." Her eyes lifted to the camera. She wasn't dangerous because she told lies. She was dangerous because she tried to correct them. She tried to tell the truth, and the system had no script for that. The video ended there, but the rest of the page revealed dozens of internal memos, source files, and communications logs leaked in full. No more redactions, no more hidden names. And it spread like wildfire. Journalists across the globe used Ava's final leak to open investigations in their own countries. New committees were formed. Tech executives were subpoenaed. For the first time, social media algorithms and state media contracts were shown to be connected, silencing voices like Meghan's through shadow policies. But perhaps the most surprising twist came quietly through the very woman. Smike had first been cut 3 months after Ava's final upload. Meghan Markle returned to public life, not through Hollywood, not through television, but in The Hague, at the International Court of Justice. She took this stand as a witness in a global media ethics hearing, one that focused on cross-border manipulation, truth suppression, and citizen targeting through information control. Her testimony was clear, calm, and brutal. "I was told I'd be safe if I followed the rules," she said. "I didn't realize the rules were built to protect only the people who made them." She showed messages, played voice notes, even shared handwritten notes from her former royal advisors, some of whom had since resigned. Her story matched Ava's reporting perfectly. When asked why she chose to return now, she gave only one answer: because she didn't disappear for nothing. And for the first time, Meghan spoke Ava's name in public. She told the story I was too afraid to finish. Now it's mine again. The courtroom fell silent. Later that day, outside the courthouse, someone left a small, handwritten sign leaning against the marble steps. It read, "She cut through the noise." And they couldn't mute her. No one knew who left it. But someone took a photo. It went viral. Across cities and countries, murals of Ava began to appear. Street artists painted her in alleyways in Rio, rooftops in Berlin, fences in Cape Town. Not as a savior, not even as a hero, but as a reminder that sometimes one voice is all it takes. Not to fix everything, but to make sure the silence doesn't win. Back in London, the monarchy faced new questions, not about crowns or tradition, but about how far it would go to stay untouched. And in Washington, oversight committees began, asking if freedom of speech could truly exist when power gets to decide what is heard. Meghan returned to private life shortly after her testimony. No new interviews, no new statements, But once a month, her website posted a single quote. The first one read, "They cut the mic. I found a louder way." And with that, the story, though closed, was never forgotten. Because Ava Raines had lit a match, and the fire she started still burned in the minds of millions.